Hello one and all, and welcome to the first episode of I Can't History. Today's topic will be focused on the Progressive Era as we look into the events after the Gilded Age. Just for recap, the Gilded Age was a time period that seemed great for America, but was really only great for the wealthy. Newly built cities and factories would lead to certain individuals becoming extremely wealthy and the rest of the population to being dirt poor and living in garbage. Everything changed, however, when Theodore Roosevelt became president. William McKinley was the president of the United States at the time, until he was assassinated on September 14, 1901. Theodore Roosevelt was next in the line of succession, and he was basically a beast. Roosevelt would go on to completely change the way presidents would run the country, as he took on more power to solve more problems that the nation faced. The Square Deal was a series of policies that Roosevelt would set to help accomplish his goals of conserving natural resources, control of corporations, and the protection of consumers. Corporations being one of the largest targets for Roosevelt, since they were one of the main problems of the Gilded Age. Trust busting, for example, was introduced to basically stop massive companies from merging, because if these companies didn't have competition, they were allowed to do whatever they wanted, and that would mean that they wouldn't have an opposition to stop or hinder them. After Roosevelt's presidency, which ended on March 4th, 1909, Roosevelt's friend at the time, William Howard Taft, succeeded him. During his presidency, Taft would go on to anger the progressive Republicans by not appointing any to his cabinet. Taft would further rub salt to the wound as he backed the Payne-Aldrich tariff, which would raise tariffs for some goods such as coal and iron. The Republican Party was split, and to make matters worse, Taft's actions would displease Roosevelt, as Taft's ideals seemed to go against the progressive ideals that Roosevelt believed in. Roosevelt, in his anger, decided to run for the presidency against Taft. Roosevelt would run as the third-party candidate for the party that he created, called the Bull Moose Party. This would split the Republican Party nearly in half, as the progressives would go and support the Bull Moose Party, and non-progressives would support Taft's presidency. Roosevelt would garner more votes than Taft would, but in the end, when the smoke cleared, a Democrat would become president. Woodrow Wilson would take the votes of nearly half of the population. As Republicans fought amongst themselves, Democrats would all support Wilson, and Wilson won by a landslide victory. Wilson would become the 28th president. Wilson has said that because of the necessary changes the country needs to grow and compete with other nations, he would continue to support progressive ideals. Wilson would go on to accomplish revisions on antitrust laws with this Clayton Antitrust Act, lead America to World War I, and even publish the 19th Amendment. But that doesn't mean he's perfect. Woodrow Wilson was known for being extremely racist and vetoed laws that would help create equality for Black Americans. Instead, he would support segregation and would even promote the Ku Klux Klan. During the Progressive Era, a lot of problems about industrializations were exposed. Muckrakers such as Ida Tarbell would write and publish to expose the truth behind corporations and their business practices. Labor unions would also attempt to bring upon better working conditions for workers. Strikes and labor disputes would be prominent at the time. The anthracite coal strike, for example, would have coal miners go on strike for better working conditions, and President Roosevelt had to do something about it, since coal was a necessary resource for the nation to function. Political machines would also lose their political power, as these machines would get exposed for all the corruption that allowed them to hold their power and wealth. A lot of change came about during the Progressive Era. Women's suffrage is a prominent example, as this time period was where first-wave feminism would really shine through. As women became more educated over time, more people began to realize that women should have an opinion when it came to political matters. Figures such as Susan B. Anthony and Carrie Chapman would create strides towards suffrage for women. World War I would also help add to the pressure for suffrage. Eventually, the 19th Amendment would get passed during Wilson's candidacy, and women would get the right to voice their opinions politically. Not everyone was so lucky, however. Racial discrimination was at an all-time high during the Progressive Era. Black Americans would constantly live in fear of lynching and arrest for things they never did. Especially during Wilson's candidacy is where a lot of laws supporting segregation would arise, and a lot of progress made for Black Americans were essentially reversed. There are attempts to push progress forward, however. People like Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Marcus Garvey set out ideals that would address and influence racial inequalities during these times. Overall, the progressive era had a lot of ups and downs. As a lot of corruption was reduced and modern ideals had begun to set in stone, there were still major problems such as discrimination and defamation. Despite this, the progressive era is probably one of the most important eras, as we take a lot of our modern ideas from this era today. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, then please let me know, as I am trying to do new things. History is also not going to be the only topic that I cover on this channel, as I will try to do more mystery cases, random science videos, or even current events. Recommendations will be helpful. For now though, I will see you later.